Welcome and thank you so much for joining us tonight as we take a look at conventions, then and now. Before we get started, I invite you to pause for just a moment and think about a large Kappa gathering you've attended, perhaps a convention or another fraternity event that went beyond a chapter meeting. Toward the end, we'll invite you to share something you've loved about those gatherings or a memorable story if one comes to mind. So keep that thought with you, and now let's dive in.
Together We Flourish is the title of the exhibit section at fraternity headquarters dedicated to Kappa gatherings. The first general fraternity gathering on record took place in October of 1876 in Greencastle, Indiana, where members revised the Constitution and bylaws, adopted a fraternity-wide initiation ceremony, and that was offered by Delta chapter at Indiana University. As the fraternity grew, Kappas continued to gather, not just out of necessity, but because coming together mattered. Today's conventions reflect that same spirit, honoring our past, conducting the work of the present, and setting our sights on the future, along with education, awards, inspiration, a touch of history, and a great deal of history. Oh, I'm sorry, a great deal of sisterhood and history. You can tell where my mind is.
That's how many conventions have we had?
So that's the sticky part. The one coming up this June will be our 76th convention, and that's the number that we're sticking with.
The 76th. Does that make sense since conventions are held every 2 years and the fraternity is now 156 years old? So when was the first?
Well, it's funny you should ask. As Mae Westerman wrote in her 1930 history, it may seem strange that any inaccuracy could exist regarding the number of national conventions held by Kappa Kappa Gamma, and yet such is the case. The story begins with Minnie Stewart, a small hiccup in memory. In 1883, Minnie wrote that there had been a convention in Monmouth in 1871, and she reiterated that in a later letter. She noted that delegates from Knoxville and, she thought, Rockport attended, complete with speeches, toasts, and a banquet. The Rockport chapter she mentioned was likely the Zeta chapter at Rockford, not Rockport, which was not established until 1874. And in 1871, the only other chapter was Beta chapter at St. Mary's School in Knoxville, Illinois, consisting of two biological sisters who were both the charter members and the entire chapter.
So perhaps those two sisters from Beta popped over to Monmouth for dinner in 1871, and someone jokingly called it a banquet. Either way, it's comforting to know that even our founders weren't immune to memory lapses. Lou Bennett Boyd later wrote, I feel sure Minnie Stewart was mistaken as to the convention of 1871. There has been no convention prior to June 1872, the date of my graduation, as there was nothing to convene.
Members from chapters at Indiana, Illinois Wesleyan, Wisconsin, and DePauw later confirmed that the 1876 convention in Greencastle was the first official convention of the fraternity. Still, perhaps as a nod to early attempts at gathering, we list 1871 as convention number one and 1876 as number two. Our first photograph connected to a convention doesn't appear until the third convention in 1878. And even then, it's not from the convention. It's of Kappas who paused for a photograph on their way home. So in this photo, there's Kate Height, Jeanette Teeter, Ida Mowdy, Lily Adams, and Louise Landers.
That brings us to what we affectionately call the Great Misunderstanding. The 1880 convention had been announced, but plans changed, and not everyone received the update.
Oops.
Oops, indeed. Several delegates made the long journey to Wisconsin, only to discover no one else had arrived. A rare odd year convention was then held in 1881, hosted by Delta chapter at Indiana University, with main sessions in the Bloomington home of Fanny Allen Palmer.
1881 convention brought really meaningful change. Tade Hartsuff of Mu chapter at Butler University was elected Grand President, marking a shift to an elected National Leadership Council. Delegates also recognized that better communication was essential and proposed a fraternity magazine, what would become the Golden Key, which was first published in 1882.
Because of the misunderstandings surrounding 1880, the convention of 1882 was held in Madison, Wisconsin, at the invitation of Ada Chapter. 15 delegates traveled from as far east as New York State and as far west as Iowa. Pi Chapter at Berkeley was represented in spirit, but the journey proved too great for a delegate to attend. And you'll notice Minnie Stewart, then with the married name Nelson, represented Alpha Chapter that year.
Though there are no official photographs from that year, the 1882 convention set familiar patterns. They organized committees, formal business sessions, and there was time for cultural enrichment. The convention closed with a banquet described as delectable both to behold and taste. And that's a tradition that happily lives on. Our archives are especially rich in convention materials. One of the earliest objects in the banquet program and menu from one of the earliest objects is the banquet program and menu from the 1884 convention in Canton, New York, hosted by Beta Beta chapter at St. Lawrence University. That convention also included a 10-page poem, and the invitations were printed using copper plates. In 1890, we see our first candid image connected to convention. It's a tiny cyanotype printed on thin paper. That same year included a charming leather-covered banquet program, reflecting the care that was given to convention planning.
Convention accommodations have certainly changed. In 1896, these Kappas made the most of a boarding house. In 1904, attendees arrived in Columbia, Missouri during the height of summer in heavy dresses, giant hats, and academic robes.
By 1906, convention materials grew more elaborate. Ada Chapter planned a banquet program that is a work of art, complete with collected autographs. One signature belongs to Ella Blakesley Wallace, who was later Ella Wallace Wells, and it's her poem, The Kappa Symphony, that was published after her death in 1909.
Delegates in 1908 were given a packing list that included an Oxford cap and gown, the Constitution, standing rules, previous convention minutes, and a blank book for notes. They were also to prepare an oral report covering every aspect of their chapter and college, and to make it interesting.
I love that. Make it interesting. Okay. By the late 1890s, we begin to see convention souvenirs in the archives, including a 1904 hat pin and a 1910 autograph book.
Oh.
These early keepsakes are the predecessors of today's convention charms. Conventions paused in 1918 due to World War I, a disruption echoed in 2020 during the COVID-19 emergency.
In 1920, convention returned with a Golden Jubilee celebrating the fraternity's 50th anniversary at the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island. College attendance among women had grown dramatically, and conventions mirrored that optimism and momentum.
As Edie Mayo later wrote, while the era suggests exuberance, Kappa at 50 was poised for mature influence, grounded in scholarship, leadership, friendship, service, and philanthropy.
Grand President Lydia Voorhees Colby reflected, "Our hearts still swell with pride and gratification when we view this structure, which took 50 years to build. May the structure of the next 50 years be as strong and beautiful."
A highlight of the 1920 convention was a display of illuminated books of ritual. Conventions were disrupted again during World War II, with 1944 replaced by an officers' conference. The fraternity reconvened in 1946 at the Grand Hotel for the 75th Diamond Jubilee.
The 1946 convention introduced the Alumni Achievement Award. The Loyalty Award followed in 1956. In 2024, the honor was awarded to Colette Beers-Rangich, who has served on the Fraternity Council as convention chair and in a number of other roles in service to the fraternity.
The next major milestone was the Centennial Convention in 1970 at French Lick, Indiana. More than 1,000 Kappas attended. Despite heat, renovations, and the recent loss within headquarters of Clara O. Pierce, longtime executive secretary, most remember an unforgettable celebration.
The Centennial featured a week-long program with celebrity Peter Nero, a professional stage pageant, immersive history displays, and the announcement that the Centennial Fund goal had been achieved. It also marked a major revision of bylaws and governance. It was also at the 1970 convention that Jane Pauley made her debut as a Kappa picker.
Planning for the sesquicentennial began years in advance, but a global pandemic reshaped those plans and resulted in our first virtual convention in 2020.
Convention returned in person in 2022 in Palm Desert, with precautions in place and a renewed appreciation for gathering together.
In 2024, we headed to Phoenix, and next we're headed to Orlando, which is fun for me as that was where my first convention as a staff member was back in 2001. And if anyone remembers, it rained every single day at that convention, and we've never had fuller breakout sessions. Nothing brings Kappas together like weather misery. Right now, headquarters is deep in the midst of preparations, and we are excited to open our latest heritage exhibit. One of my favorite additions this year is the opportunity to pick up a daily copy of The Hoot, the official newsletter of convention. Except the copies that I'm bringing are from 1926. So it'll be fun to compare what convention was like 100 years ago.
So now we'd love to hear from you. Do you have a favorite convention memory or an idea you'd like to see at future convention gatherings?
Samadou, do you have your hand up?
I do. So my favorite memory from a convention was actually from the very first one I ever attended, and it was at the Phoenician Hotel in Arizona in 1994, 92, something like that. And you know how the opening business meeting, everybody's all in white. Well, these sessions, the business sessions and everything were in this lower level part of the hotel. And people like made the mad dash, afterwards they wanted to change their clothes. So there was this swarm. I'll never forget the image. This swarm of white going like this up to the escalator and then up the escalator, like just just a vision of white, like everywhere, because we were the only ones at the hotel at the time. There were a few honeymooners, I think, but that was it. So, and I just will never forget that image because this just
Yeah.
going up later to try to get their clothes changed.
Mhm. I could see that. Any other memories or thoughts or ideas from conventions? Sam, I know you went to Epsilon chapter, but I always think of you as Mu because your daughter went to Mu. So I was going to tease you and be like, was it the first convention that Tade Coons was at? But that joke would have fallen flat since you didn't actually go to Mu.
Go ahead, Mary.
MK?
I have one. I was an intern at headquarters in summer 2014, and that was my first convention to attend in Houston, Texas, and I have a lot of good memories from that one. Number one being I'm from Gamma Nu, the Arkansas chapter, and our flag for the parade of flags, people like to make fun of it, so I took it upon myself to make my own, to redo the flag before convention. I did not know how to sew, so I went to the Michaels in Columbus and just got some fabric and a hot glue gun and made a new flag for Gamma Nu that debuted at convention that year. And they're still using it, which I found out last year in Phoenix.
Like sometimes that you've won greatest chapter, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, exactly. But my other favorite memory was, for whatever reason, we decided to do a 5K in Houston for that convention in the middle of the summer in Houston, Texas. And Kylie decided to have the interns dress up in some old dresses that she had. So, being the great intern I was, I woke up at the crack of dawn and met Kylie downstairs to get in our garb. And I think I sweated maybe a gallon of sweat just watching people do the 5K in Houston. I'm glad I don't know if we've done a 5K since, but next time I'm sleeping in for the cure.
I think we did yoga at the next one. But I
Good
mean,
move.
you killed it in the hoop skirt in Houston
Yes.
in the 175-degree heat.
I think it was the humidity that was killing us
To be
too.
fair, I also dressed up. I don't want anyone to think that I was making interns do things I would not do myself.
She was in a bathing suit, a old-timey bathing suit though.
1920s bathing suit. Yeah. Because I also just volunteered to do pool duty at this convention. Like in my 1920s bathing suit, all the undergrads that are ditching the meetings and in the pool be like, get on out. Here I am in my 1920s bathing suit, just cruising around, sending them back in, making them participate.
All right. Does anybody else have anything to share? Because then I thought I would just show a little bit of the passing of the light ceremony, which is a ceremony that we do at convention every year to close the convention during the banquet. So I can do that if that's good. Does anybody else want to share?
I saw Allison Gillespie turn her camera on. Were you going to share a convention memory, Gillespie?
I'm kind of trying, but not. When she mentioned about the flag, there was one year that we didn't have a pole stand for one of the flags, so Allie Coffey on staging stood the entire parade of flags holding up one of the chapter flags, and several others of us did as well because somebody forgot to pack one of the troughs to be able to put the flags in. So other duties as assigned.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we look forward to our next month's session is on Tuesday, May 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern, and it's going to be Dr. Oz, who's the Stewart House Museum, who's going to join us in a program called Careerist Callings and Extraordinary Life Paths.